industrial country, and chapter 7 will be for developing country. So I'm going to put into slideshow from current. Okay, we're going to discuss here the trend of trade liberalization in the United States. And then because of the 1930s, the Great Depression of 1930s, that invoked the sentiment for protection. Protectionism was up because of the Great Depression of 1930s. And then here we have US tariff policies before 1930. It was a liberal type of trade regime, and then the Smoot-Hawley Act, and then WTO, and the mechanism for trade negotiation for the President of the United States. So this book is US based, so US centric. Okay, and then we have anti-dumping duties, and I'm going to go over quickly. So to save time, U.S. tariff policies before 1930s, U.S. trade policy marked by fluctuations. Dominant motive behind early tariff laws was to provide tax revenue in the beginning. Not anymore. And we study in our previous chapter, tariff for the purpose of government revenue is only for less developed or poor countries only, not developed countries. Developed countries only for protection. So first tariff law, 1789. Today, tariff represent less than 1% of total federal government revenue of the United States. As a revenue argument for tariffs weaken, protective argument gain strength. Anti-dumping duties. Oh, this. Where am I going? Going back. Sorry. So the protective argument was given by this report by Hamilton, proposed that young industries in the United States be granted import protection until they could grow and stand on their own. And this is the infant industry argument we learned in our previous chapter. By 1820s, protectionist sentiment in the United States was established in northern states, as opposed by southern states. (1828) tariff of abominations, 45% duties, and this provoked South that wanted low duties for its imported manufactured goods, and then led to compromise tariff of 1833. This reduced tariffs. 1840s and 1850s Walker tariff 20% to eliminate budget surplus, and then the Civil War era moral tariffs to pay for the Civil War. Late 1800s cheap foreign labor argument, McKinley and Dingy tariffs. Tariffs went up to 46%. And Payne-Aldrich, 1909, the turning point against rising protectionism, 1909. And then Underwood tariff, 1913, reduction in tariff. So we saw just now, 1909, was the turning point. It was going up, and 1909 was going down. And there's a World War II again. It's like a up and down, up and down. It was up, and then 1909, it went down, and World War I, it went up again. Early 1920s, there was a scientific tariff concept. 1922, tariffs was 38%. And the most important that we want to study, Smoot-Hawley Act of 1930, at the onset of the Great Depression. 1930s, with 1929, October 29 crash of the stock market. So 1930s was the Great Depression. Economy was stagnating. People losing jobs. Basically, the economy was not good. The Great Depression. And then attention was given to the domestically produced goods. To produce goods domestically. So, meaning that to buy from local rather than to import. And as a result, or in a way, to achieve that, the tariff, average tariff, was raised to 53%. So, this sparked retaliation by 25 other countries. So it was like a protectionist threat. So President Roosevelt dismantled this Smoot-Hawley legislation with caution. So I'm looking for this a graph. Not here. Because that graph is so good to look at it. You can see, let me search. Bear with me, just one. Because it's not complete without the graph. It's a beautiful graph. Yeah, bro. Don't find it right away. So if I don't find it, I go back. Maybe after the break, I search for that. So let's go back. Okay. So what it is, the 1930s was the Great Depression, and the United States went into protectionist type of trade regime because of the, not only United States, most of the major countries facing the, what do you call this, Great Depressions, there was overall in the world at that time was the protectionist sentiment was up to protect domestic industries from imports. Okay, next. Reciprocal Trade Agreements Act of 1934. This transferred authority from Congress to the President, tended to consider national interest in forming trade policy, led to lower tariffs, and led to trade liberalization. So in that, there is a most favored nation clause agreement between two nations to apply tariffs to each other at rates as low as those applied to any other nations having MFN status. Tariff reductions made on a non-discriminatory basis. In 1998, the U.S. replaced term the most favored nation with normal trade relations. And you must know this GATT, liberalization of trade in the world, was led by GATT, General Agreement on Tariff and Trade. It's multilateral. What I mean by multilateral, many countries negotiating to reduce tariffs. Agreement among member nations to decrease trade barriers and place all nations on equal footing in trade relations. So this GATT, it was a de facto agreement that became so-called supervisor on trade relations in the world at that time. Because it was proposed ITO, International Trade Organization, but it was never ratified by the United States Congress, so ITO never materialized. This is the history. So ITO, International Trade Organization, never materialized. By de facto, the existing trade agreement at that time, GATT, became the venue for countries to negotiate and also to complain for any unfair trading practices. And then this GATT, with the final round, so many rounds here. Yeah. And the last, it was the Uruguay round. It was launched in Uruguay, but never concluded. The Uruguay round and the GATT never concluded. And this Shadow Doha, this is under WTO. But during GATT, the final round was the sorry. Was the Uruguay round. The fightings were between, you may think between developed and developing countries. No, between developed countries themselves. And you may think it was on manufacturing or manufactured goods. No, it was on agriculture. See, it's like a paradox between developed countries and on agriculture products. So that led to the Uruguay round was never concluded. Until finally, at the 11th hour, they agreed to disagree and to put this KIV, this into a meeting in Marrakesh, Morocco, at the 11th hour of 1993. What is 11th hour? At the hour of 23:59. This is really 11th hour. 23:59 minute 59 second. 31st December. That's really 11th hour, just 1 second before next year. They could not agree on the 31st December 1993. So they finally agreed to meet in Marrakesh in April 1994. On April 14 or 15, I forgot which one. It's not important. April 15, if it's 15, 1994 in Marrakesh. They signed, we can Google, but time. They signed the final act, ACT. The final act embodying the results of the multilateral negotiation, negotiation of the Uruguay round. And that's number one. They signed that. I don't remember how many countries, that's not important. Over 100 countries signed that final act embodying the results of the multilateral trade negotiation. That's number one. Number two, they agree to begin a new forum for trade negotiation. That new forum is what we know today, WTO, World Trade Organization, replaced GATT. Okay. A big difference here between GATT and WTO. So I'm just lecturing you from my here, not on the slide. Okay, you don't see on the slide. The slide is so bony, no meat. The difference. GATT was an agreement, never an institution. But WTO is an institution. With secretariat in Geneva. GATT is an institution. Even though they play the same role, which is to oversee the running of trade in the world, as far as protection, as far as reducing tariff, and also dispute settlement mechanisms. Okay. The difference, number two, that was number one, agreement versus institution. Number two, GATT only applies to products, goods, only. Whereas the trend globally, when it comes to trade, trade is not only about products, physical products. Trade also involves services, trade in services. So What is new with WTO? Both product and services covered. Whereas GATT only covering products only, not services. Not product and services. So WTO cover both products and services. So let's go back. So I already skipped. The more I drink this orange juice, the more I'm coughing. So there was GATT. With next slide coming, many rounds. So because of those many rounds, we saw tariffs went down. One thing I must add with GATT, any quota, if there is a quota, we call it non-tariff barrier, right? We learned in our previous chapter. We learned chapter 4, tariff barrier, chapter 5, non-tariff barrier. One of the non-tariff barriers is quota. I must add here right away. GATT demanded that quota must be abolished. Quota must be abolished. But how? Change the quota to tariff. Change from quota to tariff, and then negotiate those tariffs to go down. And this is multilateral negotiation and what do you call this? I lost that word. Reciprocal. Reciprocal. So negotiation in GATT is reciprocal. It's like I give you offer, what do you offer me? Okay, I'm gonna reduce tariffs on electronics by 50% from your country. What offer you will give me? Okay, you said to me, you're gonna reduce the tariff 30% on textile, for example. So give and take, reciprocal. So finish with that. Now I told you beginning 1995, 0101. You understand? 1995, January 1st, began the WTO era. After they met in Marrakesh in April 1994, after the December 31st, 1993, even at final hour could not agree. The fighting was between developed countries in agriculture. Of course, with developing countries in other, but mainly the Uruguay round failed to conclude because of the fighting between developed countries. For example, United States claimed that European Union, EEC at that time, give subsidies to their farmers under the Common Agriculture Policy, CAP. CAP, the European Union of, at that time, we're going to study in the next chapter, the stages of regional cooperation. Like today, in ASEAN, there's AFTA. AFTA is only the third stage of regional cooperation. Not yet customs union. That's the fourth. And there's stages. Like, you know, people, you don't just right away, you know, get married. Stages, you know. Just like countries also for regional integration. The most advanced of integration is European Union. Even they have their own currency, Euro. So I imagine, I don't know when, because that's the fifth stage already. like ASEAN countries, 10 ASEAN countries, I imagine if there was a complete regional integration, perhaps at that time the money will be called ASEANA. So how much is this? How much is this? 5 ASEANA. So because it's too long, people start calling ASI. So this is 5 ASI. This phone is 200 of 1,000 ASI. So for ASEAN 10 countries, I don't think this is gonna happen soon. Maybe 100 years from now, because of the gap. That's too long, 100 years. Maybe 50 years. That's because huge gap of level of development between countries in 10 ASEAN countries. Now it's after free trade area among 10 ASEAN countries. Not yet custom union. That's another level of integration. So, yeah, just now, the disputes between United States claimed that European Union or EEC, EEC, European Economic Community, EC. Okay, it was EEC. Look, even the name, guys, even the name changes by the time of the level of integration. It was EEC. After EEC, EC, European Community. After EC, European Union. See? Yeah. Maybe at that time EC. That's why I have to check. At the time EC was 1980s. Yeah. 1919. Yeah. Could be still EC. United States claimed that EC at that time had the common agriculture policy of giving subsidies to farmers. European countries, the EC countries, the EC itself claim that United States gives lots of subsidies to the farmers. So the fighting was on agriculture. So, and then they met in Marrakesh and they agreed to start this WTO. Two pillars of non-discrimination principle in GATT. And that principle continues until today, okay? So we study about GATT. Even though right away they will give you WTO. It's huge thing in between to study. Most favored nation principle, which is normal trade relations, and national treatment principle. So this non-discrimination means that if you give to a country the MFN status or treatment, you must, for that product, you must give the same to other countries, that MFN facility, which is lower tariff, to other countries as well. Because the principle is non-discrimination. And then number 2, national treatment principle. If you give national treatment to companies from this country, one country, you must give national treatment to companies from other countries as well. Non-discrimination. And promoting freer trade, settling disputes, improve dispute resolutions process by formulating complaints procedures and providing conciliation panel. Predictability through binding and transparency. You can predict. I mean, the result will be predictable, meaning because binding, and that's transparency. Promising not to increase trade barriers, as important as reducing one. Business has had clear view of the future. Countries required to disclose trade policies, and this is multilateral trade negotiation. Try to get negotiations was bilateral, with get multilateral. Kennedy round, Tokyo round, Uruguay round, and there are many rounds not listed there. That's why I'm not that happy with this. I wanted to go to another edition of my slide, which I don't remember exactly right now which edition. I have 14 edition, 12 editions of the slides. So Kennedy round, last Uruguay round, and then 1995 WTO. You see that there was there was 1999 in Seattle. There was Mexico, Singapore, and Doha round, which also could not come to a conclusion. So now the WTO governs the conduct of trade relations, bind the commitments to adhere to the GATT rules, broad range of trade pacts, negotiated under GATT, database, trade measures and statistics. Okay, many countries there. In Switzerland, as an institution, multilateral, trade and services, and yes, also include intellectual property and investment. So add to what I said earlier, the difference between GATT and WTO. GATT was only pertaining to products only, goods, physical goods only, GATT, physical good only. But WTO cover physical goods, products and services, and also intellectual property. And investment regulations. All toward liberalization, to liberalize. And with intellectual property is to make sure countries trade fairly by adhering to the intellectual property regulations, that you cannot copy other countries or other companies' product, cannot copy and make product of the same. You have to adhere to the intellectual property protection regulation. It is important. Number one, fair trade, that your product you copy cost little for you for design or for R&D. So it's not fair trade, right? To make fake, to ensure fair trade, yes, must adhere to the intellectual property regulations. Number one, that was number one. Number two, intellectual property actually ensures investment and innovation. I don't want to invest my money to do R&D and to do invention if today I put out my invention, tomorrow another person copy my invention. See, that will stop innovation. That's why there needs the intellectual property protection. Yeah, I don't get that word. Finally, I get it. Intellectual property protection must be protected by law. And countries must follow the law. administers a unified package of agreements to which all members are committed, watchdog of international trade, WTO is not a government. It is an institution, international, global institution. Individual nations free to set on appropriate level of environmental, labor, health and safety protection, oversees implementation of tariff cuts and reductions in non-tariff barriers. I mentioned it earlier, non-tariff barriers must be, if it's quota, must be changed to tariff and negotiated down. Reverses policies of protection in certain sensitive areas, settles trade disputes. Major objective of WTO is to strengthen GATT mechanism for settling trade disputes through consultation, dispute panel, and appellate body and retaliatory tariffs. So, does WTO reduce national sovereignty? Critics say yes, to settle disputes, not US. Supporters, no. Decision of WTO dispute panel cannot force United States to change the laws. Are the specific obligations WTO imposes greater or less than the trade benefits United States receives? Does WTO harm the environment? Two arguments that trade liberalizations harms environment. And this, the number one, foster race to the bottom in environmental standard. Companies, the bullet number one, companies will search for countries that have lack enforcement of environmental law protection laws. Countries that you can cut trees, you can pollute the air without punishment, lacks enforcement. So companies will try to save costs by going to these countries, because in their own country, so many regulations pertaining to environmental protection. You know, you have to put some machine, certain component in your factory to reduce the smoke coming out. You have to do this to comply with environmental regulations that we study in previous chapter. And all these regulations, government regulations, will add cost to the production. See, that's why they go to places, usually poorer countries, developing countries that have, usually they have lax enforcement, lax enforcement of environmental regulations. So that's what it means. Race to the bottom. They run away from European countries, they run away from United States, go to poor countries, because they can, I'm talking about companies, they can produce there at cheaper cost. Number two, bullet number two, trade liberalization encourages some practices that are unacceptable to some people. Example, catching dolphins in tuna nets. Oh. You know what happened? Nets is important. If you use very small net, you will kill all many fish. But if you have large net, you can catch only the big fish. You will not harm the small fish. You understand? Net. So that's what it is there. Does trade liberalization improve environment? Trade stimulate economic growth, demand for cleaner environment, tougher environmental laws. Trade growth lead to development and dissemination of environmentally friendly production techniques. The future of WTO, major barriers to multilateral trade deals is evolving balance of world economic power, Brazil, Russia, India, China, the BRICS, and the new addition to BRICS, Thailand, Malaysia, and another one last week. See themselves as poor enough to need protection. Rich countries consider BRICS major competitors. Trade liberalization proceeds along two tracks, with trade attempts to enforce environmental, labor, intellectual property protection favored by the United States. On the other hand, emphasizes decreasing tariffs outside sensitive sectors favored by China. What are sensitive sectors? In any country, usually, there is a sensitive sector, like important to the country, like automobile sector in Malaysia. The Malaysia wants to protect sensitive sector, usually sector that with the national ambition, they consider sensitive, or sectors that they want to protect the resources from depleting. So depending on whatever country, they're not the same. But the word sensitive, meaning the one that they want to protect. In that negotiation, this is the book, US-centric. For the United States, there is a fast-track authority given to the president. This trade promotion authority, president actively consults with Congress and private sector through negotiation. When negotiation is complete, outcome subject to up or down vote. Okay, without amendment in both houses, within 90 days. Fast-track authority instrumental to major trade agreements. The president can act fast, but efforts to renew face stiff opposition. In addition to WTO rules, unfair trade practices in the United States has the trade remedy laws, escape clause, temporary safeguard. President may terminate trade or modify agreement to prevent injury to United States firms. Initiated by petition from American industries to the United States Trade Commission, which investigates and recommends the response to the president. Fair trade escape. Subsidized dump imports, fair trade. And this is Super 301, known also Super 301, Section 301 of the Trade Agreement, Trade Act United States. That United States apply this law to companies from foreign countries. That's how it got the name Super 301. Foreign practices violating a trade agreement that bring injury to United States products. Unjustifiable, unreasonable, discriminatory practices, burdensome to U.S. commerce, all appropriate and feasible action. So that's Super 301. And we're going to study, U.S. safeguard limits surging imports of textile from, for textile, there is a separate agreement governing textile. That's what we call MFA, Multi-Fiber Agreement. Restricted competition from developing exporting countries with low labor costs to industrial nations. Negotiation each year. WTO views export subsidies as unfair competition. Importing countries can therefore retaliate by levying countervailing duty, limited amount of foreign export subsidy. It's going to be graph here. I'm going to stay, Objective is to increase price of imported goods to its fair market value. So, anti-dumping duty, we learned from our previous class what is dumping. Selling or exporting products and sell them at either lower than the price domestically or lower than the cost domestically. You sell those to foreign countries lower than the cost or lower than the prices in your own country, domestically in your own country. That's dumping. So there's anti-dumping duty. Rather than seek countervailing duties, United States firms have recently found it easier to convince US government to impose anti-dumping duties because countervailing duties is for subsidy, to counter the subsidy. So rather for dumping, it's easier to use the anti-dumping duty. So it offsets export sales in the United States at prices below average total cost of production and price discrimination where foreign firms sell in the United States at prices less than their own country. So that anti-dumping duty will offset that margin. Investigation will be done, will seek to do what? To find evidence of material injury to the US companies, US product or companies, link between the dumped imports and the alleged injury. To make a link that this product in the United States is facing material injury, meaning material injury means unfair competition, cannot compete with the products because being dumped here at very low cost, so cannot compete. Remedies against dumped and subsidized import. Direct effect of dumping and subsidized imports is to lower prices, reducing benefits and costs for the importing country, benefits consumers if imports are finished goods, and consuming industries that use imports as intermediate inputs, imposes cost on import competing industry. On the other hand, it's workers and other domestic industries and selling immediate inputs for the import competing industries. So for the upstream industry will face the unfair practices with the products being dumped in their own country. Upstream, those import competing to produce locally, domestically. But for those who are consumers will be happy. I can buy cheaper because being dumped. This is the opposite there. Remedies. Dumping at prices below fair market value and subsidizing export are unfair trade practices. Can be neutralized by imposition of anti-dumping or countervailing duty on dumped or subsidized goods. Next, Super 301. Super. That's how it was. And it is still written that way in newspaper magazine. Super 301. Empowers United States trade representative to respond to unfair trading practices by foreign nations. Foreign trade restrictions that hinder U.S. export, if there's that stopping export of the United States, or foreign subsidies that hinder U.S. export to third country markets. USTR can impose tariff or import restrictions on products and services or deny foreign country trade agreement concessions. Next, IPR awards inventor or author exclusive rights to use the invention, copyrights, trademarks, patents, lots of violation. Well, textbook is written by for the United States. So trade adjustment assistance. Rationale: if society enjoys welfare gains from increased efficiency from trade liberalization, some sort of compensation should be provided for those who are injured by import competition. Is TTA necessary? This is the program to help those companies being discriminated against, facing the unfair trade practices from foreign companies, foreign countries. So the government give assistance. Is it necessary? Next, industrial policies: increase competitiveness of domestic firms, offer tax incentives, loan guarantees, low interest rates, and there's Exim Bank, independent agency of the United States government that guarantees working capital loans for United States exporters, credit assurance that protects United States exporters' commercial loans. So there is a bank, Exim Bank. Now, the lesson, the real lesson. With a loan guarantee, this is a quantity of loan, double funds, and interest rate. This is demand, supply with no subsidy and with subsidy. With a loan guarantee, Japan Airlines gets a loan on a better terms than it could in the private market. However, American taxpayers bear the risk that the loan will not be repaid. Also, the United States economy is made poorer because scarce resources are redirected from higher value uses toward lower value uses. So, with no subsidies, the interest rate is 6%. With subsidy, it turns out interest rate is now 4%. So, this is the meaning of scarce resources, which is capital, are now redirected, moving to being used for lower value uses, which now gives you at 4% return. The interest rate is only 4%. Unlike before, 6%. You see? Because of subsidy. The supply of the loan shift to the right with the subsidy, but it will bring down the interest rate. More loans, lower interest rate. Quantity of loanables is horizontal axis. Price of a loan is vertical axis. Demand curve for loanable funds is underlaid by gels. Demand for investment capital curves, downward slope implies borrowing increases as interest rate decreases. Yes. Supply of loanable funds offered by Bank of America is denoted by S. Upward slope reflects the law of supply, upward. Bank offers more funds to borrowers when the interest rate increases. The In absence of loan guarantee, market equilibrium occurs at point A there, with no subsidies, where 20 million lend at 60% interest rate. US Airlines and Boeing spar over Export-Import Bank credit. 2014, US Airlines opposed cheap credit from Exim Bank to foreign countries and companies. Credit extended at below market rates, which US Airlines industry at cost disadvantage because Japan Airline could buy airplane at cheaper interest rate loan. You see, 4%. The reason was that to promote export of Boeing, so that more Boeing airplane can be sold. That's why there's this with subsidy to make it cheaper, cheaper for Japan Airline to purchase Boeing from America. You see, but US Airlines like Delta, that put them at disadvantage because now Japan Airlines can increase their fleet. Loan 4% with subsidy from the Exim Bank. Subsidy in terms of interest, lower interest rate. You see, so Delta export credits helps Boeing and negatively affects US airline industry. Delta doesn't like it. Delta Airlines. Boeing, for the maker of airline, Boeing, curtailing export credit would jeopardize export aerospace industry. So US solar industry deems as China's industrial policy lies up bankruptcy of three American solar power. So I'm going to go quickly. Chinese government China's government effective industrial policy subsidizes production of solar panels. Glut of supply in weak demand depresses price and profits. 2010, President Obama visited Solindra. It is defaulted on government's guaranteed loan, was seen as a symbol of failed industrial policy. One thing I want to add, not on the slide, the word industrial policy is a sensitive word in the US. Sensitive in a way that you don't want to mention it. You don't want to say the word industrial policy. This is during the Cold War era. When was the Cold War? At the end of World War II, 1945, began the Cold War. End of World War II, 1945, came two superpower, the US and the Soviet Union. So the Cold War was between the US and Soviet Union at the time. The Cold War ended in 1991. From 45 to 1991. How it ended? The collapse of the Soviet Union. The end of Soviet Union in 1991. Left today is Russia. Okay, no more Soviet Union. How it ended? 1989, I should add right now. 1989 was an important year in world economic history. 1989, symbolized finally by the incidents of the collapse of the Berlin Wall in Germany. Before 1990, Germany was 1990, okay? Germany was West Germany, East Germany, divided by the Berlin Wall. In the city of Berlin, there's a wall, tall wall. That division by the Berlin Wall is so symbolic. Not only symbolic, really, practically a division between two things. In the economy, it's a division between Western capitalist system and Eastern part, which is the socialist system. That's economy. Politically, the Berlin Wall divided between two ideology, Western democracy and communism. So, in a way, I can say that like this. The Berlin Wall divided four things, or two things. Two with four, okay? Two things. West Germany and all the West. Politically, Western democracy. Economically, capitalist economic system. West. East of Berlin Wall, politically, communism. Economically, socialism. You follow me? That division. Berlin Wall collapsed in 1989, and that led to German unification. I said 1990, maybe 91. I forgot which one, but it's not important. Okay? But 1989 is the most important. That began with the revolution in Romania. At that time, in 1989, there was a demonstration effect. Demonstration here does not mean demonstration, not like this. Demonstration effect of the success, economic success of the so-called East Asian miracle of at that time, the Gang of Four Tigers at that time. The success of Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, and Hong Kong. These were called the Four Tigers. The success of the Four Tigers deliver the message to the people in Eastern Europe. Look, these countries, they have no problem of finding food on the table because their countries industrialized and they have this political freedom and so on. So these people in the European countries, Eastern European countries, under socialism, under communism at that time, socialism and communism, they went out to the street and demanding for democracy. And that happened in Romania, that led to the so-called dictator at that time, Ceausescu, the name Ceausescu, finally was killed and now dragged behind the truck on the streets. And that spread to Czechoslovakia, spread to Poland. In Czechoslovakia, there was this playwright, I forgot the name, became the first president of Czech Republic. Czechoslovakia became two, separated by two, Czech Republic and Slovakia. It was Czechoslovakia, one country. I forgot the name. He was a playwright, became the first president. In Poland, the chief of this labor union, labor union, Gdansk, there's a port in Gdansk. The labor union of the port workers, his name also I forgot. He became the president of Poland. So that spread And that spread also to Tiananmen Square in China. In the spring of 1989, it was the demand for democracy spread to China as well in Tiananmen Square. So 1989 was the year, very important, the demand for democracy in the socialist and communist countries that led to change. And finally, one by one, the republics in the Soviet Union, beginning from Latvia, Estonia, Latvia, down Ukraine, and all these tans, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Turkmenistan, and also all these declare independence from the Soviet Union. And at that time, it was Gorbachev. He's a good man. He passed away already. Gorbachev, I saw him. He's got the birthmark here. It's like a map. A map. He had to do some reforms. And the reform by him, perestroika, restructuring of the Soviet politics and economy, restructuring. Perestroika and glasnost. Glasnost is transparency, glass like a glass, transparency. And a good man that did the reform finally was kicked out by this Boris Yeltsin. And so many things happened. These republics already declared independence. So finally, 1991, the collapse of Soviet Union. So I just finished explaining to you what? The end of Cold War. Took a long, long way, right? But you can read, not on the slide, but I'll give you knowledge. Cold War ended in 1991. Yeah, even not on the slide, what I was saying. The word industrial policy is a sensitive word in the United States. Why? The moment you say industrial policy, that conjures the word of central planning economic system, which is Soviet Union, the arch rival of the United States during the Cold War. Okay, Cold War between whom? US and Soviet Union. So this industrial policy, same as you're talking, you are socialist. You are centrally planned economy. Soviet Union was a centrally planned economy. Centrally planned. Planned by the government. There's no private ownership. All the properties belong to the state, to the country. You work as a laborer for the country. So no private ownership. The economy is planning, central planning, centrally planned by the Politburo, the government of the Soviet Union. So I think I finally finished explaining to you, not on the slide. This is from readings, okay? And not on our exam also. Just give you knowledge. The word industrial planning or policy, even, the word industrial policy or worse, industrial planning. No. Taboo. Should not be mentioned. Sensitive in the US. Because if you say industrial planning, even if you say industrial policy, it means planning. Planning means Soviet Union, socialist. So, finish. Not on the slide, not on the exam. Just for your knowledge. Okay. What time is it now?
12:39.
Okay.
12:40.
Carrier agrees to keep jobs in Indiana. 2016 Trump convinced Carrier not to go to Mexico. Carrier will get $7 million tax break. US won't become prosperous by forcing business to take non-economic investment. Yes, this is a critique. You know, if the government, if Trump wants to keep the industries in the United States from going to Mexico, the companies will have to bear higher labor costs in the US. The cost of production in the US is not competitive. So this is against the principle of free trade. Free trade means that if it's cheaper to produce this product in Mexico, let be it. And US focus on products that or services that United States can do, can produce more efficiently. So, US won't become more prosperous by forcing companies to make non-economic decisions. Economic decisions, yes, Mexico cheaper. Why you want me to keep in Alabama? I want to go to Mexico, cheaper there. There's a strategic trade policy. Government help domestic companies to capture economic profits from foreign competitors. Support for certain strategic industries. Yeah, important for future domestic economic growth. Policy widespread benefits, externalities we study, previous chapter. The word strategic, you know, airlines is a strategic industry in the United States, so-called sensitive airlines. I mentioned cars is sensitive in, now electric car becomes a sensitive industry in the US. Why? China, BYD, has overtaken Tesla. Yeah. So sensitive industry is electric car. Imperfect competition, potential to attain long-term economic profits. This strategic trade policy is actually imperfect competition. You give priority to certain industry you consider strategic with incentives. Critics of strategic policies. Special interest group may dictate who will receive government support. Worldwide retaliation and counter-retaliations. Government lacks information to intervene in the market. Sanctions. Government may mandate limitations place customary trade and financial relations among nations used to protect domestic economy, to reduce nuclear proliferations, set compensations for property appropriated by foreign governments, combat international terrorism, preserve national security, protect human rights, all these sanctions. Nations initiative, they're initiating trade sanctions, boycott on imposing nations export, quotas on imposing nation imports from target nations, financial sanctions, limitations on official lending or aid. For target nations, unused production capacity, inward shift of production possibilities curve. Is there a graph there? I'm not happy with the slide because no graph. So I'm gonna, after the break, I'm gonna find those graphs from another slide. Okay, because of section, this is what happened. Guys, look here. With sanction, this will reduce production possibilities frontier. This is the impact. Inward shift of production possibilities curve. Inward shift. Don't see it? Oh, static. The first time It's not moving. Today is my trial for this. I never done it before. This, because in the past I was using this pyramid. Pyramid can stream. Okay. Not pyramid. I forgot the Korean app that you can live stream multiple places. I couldn't make connection. Economic inefficiencies, hardship for the population and government, reduced growth rate, sanction for nuclear weapon. I'm not gonna go over Ukraine and finish. So, what time is it now?
45.
So we take a break for how many?
15?
Oh, no. Yeah, 10, okay. Yeah.
It's like